Hello and welcome to this special show on Rajya Sabha television. I'm Vishal Dahiya and you're watching Reset India. Now, here in this particular show, we talk about several aspects vis-a-vis Indian economy, the focus areas wherein a lot of resetting, reshaping, rethinking needs to happen. And today, we're going to talk about one such area, that is the rural economy. The focus is on transforming rural economy. The reason why that is the key focus area is because predominantly we are a rural country, almost 2/3 of our population and almost equal number of the workforce lives in rural areas. Despite the urbanization, we expect that by 2050, at least more than half of our population will still be living in these rural areas. And the rural areas, the rural economy contributes at least around 45 to 46% to the national income. So here we are talking about how to bring about the tough transformation in rural economy, and we have a special set of guests for that as well. But before we go to the guests, let me first show you some works which have been done by the government in terms of strengthening the rural economy and what can be the focus areas. So let's have a look in terms of some programs, some key programs which are being run by the government. And when you look at the strengthening of rural economy, one is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Then you have Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission. Then there is Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushalya Yojana as well. And we also have Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, that is the rural one. And we also have Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana to focus on the key infrastructure area there in terms of bringing better roads to the rural hinterland. And Shyama Prasad Mukherjee National Rurban Mission is also one of the very significant programs being run by the government, and National Social Assistant Program is another one. So these are some key programs which are being run by the Ministry of Rural Development as far as strengthening the rural economy is concerned. We also look at some focus areas here, some key focus areas where the focus has to be from here onwards, and there are almost 5 of them. When we talk about rural economy, agriculture is one key focus area here. When we talk about bringing that transformation to the rural economy, then growth by agro-based industrialization, that is agri-industries which we talk about, and linkage between farm and non-farm sectors is another key focus areas, followed by MSME there. And apart from MSMEs, we also have to focus on the rural and urban linkage. So these 5 are key focus areas when we talk about what needs to be done as far as transforming rural economy is concerned. We'll look at all these aspects. We'll look at all these focus areas as well. We'll try and do a bit of an evaluation of all the schemes also which we just saw there as in terms of what effect those schemes have had on the rural economy. So let's go across to our panel now. We have a set of experts, 3 experts who are joining us today. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Dr. Suresh Pal. He is the director of ICAR's National Institute of Agriculture, Economics and Policy Research. We also have with us Mr. Rakesh Ranjan. He is senior consultant in Niti Aayog, deals with this particular sector and several others as well. Mr. Abhinav Prakash is also joining us. He is assistant professor economics in the University of Delhi. Welcome all of you gentlemen to Rajya Sabha television. And let me begin with you, Mr. Ranjan. Let's start by breaking this entire jargon of schemes and focus areas into layman's terms, and let's understand why rural economy is so important, so crucial there.
So thank you very much for inviting and putting a very good question, because as you keep on seeing the growing literature that good number of people are saying that India's success will lie in urbanization. Fine, we agree to a large extent to that statement also, but the fact remains that a very large portion of Indians live in rural area, as you have said in the beginning of the program. And also I would like to say that while a very large percentage of the workforce is engaged in the farm sector, the farm sector's contribution to GDP is only in the range of 14 to 15%. Now that tells us a lot of things. It tells us the opportunity, it tells us the direction to go, and it tells us the challenges in the sector. Because if a very around 40 to 45% of workforce is dependent on the farm sector, then we need to do something, and our approach has to be that has to look into different directions while within the rural economy. And let me summarize the approach which is there in the government. The first one is that go within the house and improve the conditions there. First thing is that provide the basic infrastructure. So if you have seen, one of the important high points as well as the approach of the government is that make life easier, provide the gas connection, provide the housing under the Prime Minister housing scheme, provide the electricity to every household. And these are not only the freeing of the the drudgery of the poverty, but also to kind of provide the productivity, provide the economic productivity to the good number of population. The second part which is there is that do all the infrastructure, basic infrastructure, try to link the rural areas. And one, you made a very important point that the solution lies in also taking advantage of the growing urban sector. So a very good rural and urban linkage. So basically, if you really look at this, the Prime Minister Gramin Sadak Yojana, which is one of the very important program, and I think a very large part of the connection of the habitation has already been done under this particular program. Then the program of the taking the internet connection and high-speed internet to the rural areas, because that would allow the rural population to get integrated and take advantage of the development elsewhere. So if you really look at this, improve the infrastructure in these areas, which can allow people to have the higher economic productivity. The third line is that improve the productivity within the agriculture sector itself, and there are many of the initiatives that is taken by the government in this regard. The fourth line is, which is very important, is that look at long term. And that is where I would like to mention one of the initiative of Niti Aayog, where we have selected around 112 very backward districts which are predominantly rural, and try to develop some of the key sectors in these districts so that they can be the citizen living in this district take advantage of all the development process and become partner of the development process itself. So the sectors which are there which are very long term is health and nutrition. Let me be very clear on that unless we take care of the health and nutrition and the basic education of our citizenry, it is that we can't think of a long-term sustainable growth as well as the meeting of the commitment of the SDG that India has made. Okay. So looking from that perspective, the program like the aspirational district programs are key program, and the emphasis of the government of India to improve the SDG along with the partnership with the state government, because very large number of those sectors are with the state government. And lastly, you have mentioned, if everything is going on fine, but you still need certain people who are left behind, then there is a safety net which is called Manrega, which can develop as one of the important safety net at the time of pandemic, which happened. And we would like to see that in the next year also how it pans out. But the fact remains that these 4 or 5 approaches that improve the basic facility, improve the infrastructure for productivity, increase the productivity within agriculture, so that the solution of India does not lie simply on being only on farm sector, but also to create a non-farm employment within the rural setup. Okay. And also to take advantage of the urban and rural linkage, and be long-termist in terms of health, nutrition, and skill development and financial inclusion, and also that create a safety net which is already in place, strengthen it, and to be with it, which is Manrega. Okay. So this is the overall approach you can put it, and it is very, very important and critical factor for Government of India. Okay, that's quite a holistic sum up of the approach which is being taken, and you mentioned Manrega. Let me also tell our viewers that as far as Manrega is concerned, we've had recent news in terms of after the pandemic struck, Manrega has seen quite a huge number in terms of demand being generated out there. Let me go across to Dr. Pal now. Dr. Pal, your views on the approach part here and breaking down the importance of rural economy and the need for transforming it.
Yeah, basically, if we look at the performance of rural economy, the major sector is agriculture sector. and other sector, rural non-farm sector, is partly dependent on the performance of the agriculture sector. And the performance during the last 7 or 8 years has been very good. It's, I think, more than somewhere between 3.5 to 4%. That is quite, I would say, the impressive rate of growth which India has achieved. And besides this, what the country has achieved, this growth is coming from those areas where the productivity was not that high. What we call in terms of economics, there is some kind of convergence in agriculture growth. That is a very, very positive signs. And now the challenge before us is how to accelerate this growth process as well as this convergence process in the agriculture growth and land productivity. And in that context, what Mr. Ranjan was saying, focus on the aspirational districts, because in those districts the agriculture productivity is really low and non-farm activities also are not that much. So development of agriculture in those regions, basically it will be a really win-win situation, increasing the income level there as well as reducing the poverty.
Okay.
Second major challenge for the agriculture sector would be in the years to come, because our economy is going to grow very rapidly. If you just leave 1 or 2 years now because of COVID and other things, it is going to recover soon, and we are going to have a very fast rate of growth. And the target which the government has set, it is $5 trillion economy. So the implication for agriculture and rural sector is how these two sectors, they are going to respond to that much growth in the per capita income. That is certainly going to have impact on demand for food commodities and other things. And there the agriculture has to respond to that challenge. That is very, very important. Now the question is, what are the things we need to do it? Of course, this agriculture non-farm sector, those linkages, they are going to strengthen because of the strategy which the government is going to adopt. But at the same time, we have to look at it, what is the growth strategy we have to follow. In the past, I will not go back too far.
Dr. Pal, Dr. Pal, let me come in here, Dr. Pal. That's a very significant point. Dr. Pal, can you hear me?
Irrigation.
Dr. Pal?
Now we have to focus on the
Dr. Pal, can you hear me, sir? Dr. Pal?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm butting in between here, but that's a very important point which you are making. The reason why I'm stopping you here is because let me also bring in, Mr. Abhinav here on his initial views, and then we will talk about obviously, what needs to be the focus areas. You're going on the right track out there when you talk about that linkage between the farm and the non-farm sector. But let me also bring in Mr. Abhinav here. Abhinav, as both Dr. Pal and Mr. Ranjan were describing in terms of the importance there of the rural economy, and in various aspects, various sectors, subsectors there, the agriculture, the the agri-based industries and the linkages there. So in terms of the approach which has been taken so far and the importance, how would you summarize that?
Well, that's a very fair point, but we have to remember a couple of things. That our old idea of looking villages as a separate entity and then trying to do the rural development is not a very good strategy. We have to see villages as complementary to the cities. So we have to pay more attention to the interlinkages between the villages and the cities, and also between the villages which are located nearby. So we have to have this cluster approach when we're talking about the rural economy, because your administrative boundaries do not define the economic geography of the place. So we have to pay more focus on the interlinkages, on the synergies between the different villages which are located nearby. We have to look at the economic geography in our policy making approach. So that is one thing we need to do. The second thing which is very important, which they have pointed out, is that agricultural sector is the most important pillar of the rural economy. So we really need to focus on the agricultural sector, and the government focus on doubling the farmer incomes is a very good step. And also these farm laws were also a very good step. So we have to wait and see how they unfold in the future. But you see, once you combine the farm laws, these recent farm laws, along with the labor reforms, what they have done, that they have created the scope for the growth of the agro-based industries. So because food processing industries, which are very labor intensive, Once you look at the labor law reform and the farm reforms, they are basically targeted, geared towards that. The third point, which is often not discussed, is that our frontline bureaucracy in the villages, in the rural economy, that is depleted, the ranks are depleted, and they're not very efficient. So the government has so many schemes, as my co-panelists have mentioned about, but the problem is that we do not have the people on the ground to implement that. The Ministry of Rural Development has around 20 to 30% vacancies. We're not even talking about expansion of the numbers of people, but it's the vacancies we have. So our frontline bureaucracy, first of all, we have to strengthen it. We have to reform it so that it can be more expert. It has to be more specialized in implementing those policies on the ground level. And the last point, which is most important, is to give more economic freedom and encourage commercialization at the grassroots level. This is something we have not done so far. Somehow we see that the farmers and the villagers are supposed to be shielded from the market forces, but that has been a wrong approach so far. So the government has been trying to change that over the past several years, but I think going forward, we have to encourage more private investment, more commercialization of the rural economy, and we have to remember that a large portion of people are now engaged in the non-farm activities. So we have to focus on those allied activities as well if you're looking at the agricultural economy as a whole.
Okay. That indeed is a very valid point. That brings me back to Dr. Suresh Pal here. Dr. Pal, Abhinav has left it exactly at the same point where you wanted to pick up earlier in terms of, that farm and non-farm linkages. The linkage between that particular, these two particular subsectors is really, really important there and really crucial because one can't survive without the other. That's in today's context, that's pretty much clear. And the way you're pointing out, what needs to be done in terms of bringing those linkages on the ground and generating the expected results from those linkages?
Yeah, that's what I said. In the rural areas, the agriculture is the main sector. And other sector, rural non-farm employment, that is basically developing around the agriculture sector. If we have the good agriculture growth, or the districts or the regions where agriculture growth is good, so there the growth of a rural non-farm sector is also good because there will be demand for services and support systems. So because of their the rural non-farm sector is growing actually. But we have to see how we can further strengthen these linkages. And one area which is very strongly emerged and government is emphasizing on that is we have to focus in agriculture sector on the post-harvest sector, markets, agro-processing, value addition. So if we are going to invest in these particular activities, certainly there will be more employment opportunities in the rural areas, there will be more value addition. So it will be a win-win situation for the worker in the rural areas as well as for the agriculture sector that will contribute to the farm income as well as generate employment in the areas. And for agro-processing, there is emphasis of the government. There is a agri-infrastructure fund, but at the same time, we have to focus on three things. First is the investment. Both, it could be public, it could be, let's say, from the cooperative sector, and largely it will come from the business sector, private sector. That is the one thing. Second, important factor is for the growth of the this agro-processing is the technology, which our R&D system has to contribute. And some of the technologies, they are available globally. So the private sector will be able to, bring those technologies here. And third important aspect is basically management. Okay. The organized sector, they will have all these things. But for the small scale sector, maybe what we are talking about, the farmers producer organization or small kind of household initiatives, for them, we need to bring really this management factor and link them with the where the raw material is available and with the market, so that they are able to progress. And what you said initially, okay, MSME, for agriculture sector, agro industries, role of MSME sector is extremely important, and we need to provide capital, we need to provide the management, and we need to provide the technology which is available. That will certainly going to contribute to the growth of the this agro industry in the rural areas, which is really need of the day.
Okay. That's quite a fair sum up there, and that brings me back to both Mr. Ranjan as well as Mr. Abhinav here. And a quick reaction. Let's start with you, Mr. Ranjan, on two parts. One, as described by Dr. Pal here, in terms of the importance of linkages between farm and non-farm sector, something which you also referred to in your first response, and Abhinav also spoke about. Another part which Abhinav raised in terms of strengthening the frontline bureaucracy for better implementation. Both these are really, really important.
Yeah, I think they are very good point. Mr. Suresh Pal has said that the linkage has to be strengthened. Look, in the agriculture sector, what we see is that India need to, and all farmers need to rise on the value chain. Thereby, I'm meaning that if you're growing a product for which there is less demand, or the product is not fetching good price, then it is the time that we need to go into the high value product. And for that, thankfully, as Mr. Suresh Pal is also saying, and we all also feel that as the economy rebounds and as the per capita disposable income rises, as well as you open up. Abhinav made a very important point, not to shield agriculture from market, but rather work with the market and take advantage of the market. And also that would include the international market. So as the demand for the Indian agriculture product rises, and in agriculture, I will also include the mixed farming, which is animal husbandry and fishery, because that is the high value products in that. As long as you take the advantage of the rising purchasing capacity at the urban area as well as in the international market, and encourage the farmer to kind of be an entrepreneur on that. And I would say that a large part of infrastructure part is already in place. The question is also to change some of the critical gap which exist, and like information gap, or like the gap in somewhere in the infrastructure, or sometime inability to react very timely because you are bound in the credit system. So availability of the larger credit system to agriculture, the more of the knowledge about the financial inclusion. Say in aspiration district program, we provide a lot of importance to give to financial inclusion, because what we have realized is that there is so much a requirement of improving the financial literacy at the rural level, that a good part of advantage can be taken of the system that is already created by the lending institutions and by the spread of the financial instruments in this country. So by this, as I would say, that one is of course that take advantage of the urban-rural linkage, in that rising capacity of the rising purchasing power in the urban area, and the agriculture can take advantage of that, go to the international market, take advantage of the product. And also, I mean, I can tell you some of the things, like when you look at the dairy as well as look at the production of say mixed farming, the artificial insemination, we were looking at this particular important indicator in many of the aspirational districts, and we found that while many districts in India are in the range of around 80 to 90% of the animal being subjected to artificial insemination, which is a very good thing, there are many districts where only 20% or 25% of the figure has been reached. So we have a lot of places to go, miles to go, but at the same time, a lot of opportunity there to improve and to jack up the whole production process. So with all this thing, that improve the linkage with the urban area, improve the linkage with the international market, rely on the market first, shield the farmer from the market if required, but rely on the market first. Don't try to kind of save them always from the market, and allow them to take advantage of the market, as well as the point that Mr. Suresh Pal is making, that having more investment in agriculture sector in terms of your supply chain investment, and the food processing investment in the agro-processing industry, that would make a lot of difference, and that's the way to go.
Okay, definitely. Those are key focus areas. Abhinav, quick concluding comments from you there in terms of what need to be done from here onwards to reset and transform the rural economy. Some of them have already explained by Dr. Pal and Mr. Ranjan there as well. Increase investment, increase linkages. But what apart from that?
Well, I'll just mention two more points. One thing is that this scheme of one district, one product is a very promising scheme if we just widen the scope of the scheme, because the product does not necessarily have to be agricultural product or even the industrial product. In many areas of the country, like in the central India, you can also have cultural projects, like you have the tribal areas which have their own local festivals and villages, you can brand them, make them much bigger to promote tourism, and that will also revitalize the rural economies in this hinterland.
Okay.
The other point is that, which is something very important, is that the property rights in the villages are not secure. So most of the cases which are pending in the judiciary are related to the land rights. So once we are able to do this modernization of the land records, which the government is already doing, the digitalization of the land records, coupled with the judicial reforms, I think that will encourage lots of private investment and also the entrepreneurship of the people.
Okay.
Because as of now, people are very scared of doing any business or investing in land or property in the countryside because the property rights are not really very secure.
Okay.
So that is something we need to focus on.
Okay, great. Wonderful points there. Thank you so much, Abhinav, Mr. Ranjan, as well as Dr. Suresh Pal for your valuable views and inputs on this important aspect. So there it is, as our panelists were pointing out, as far as transforming rural economy is concerned, there are various challenges, but there are several opportunities as well. And there are key focus areas which our experts pointed out in terms of giving a push to the growth in agriculture sector, increasing the linkages between farm and non-farm sector, as well as rural and urban linkages, bringing more investment, ensuring that the implementation of the schemes which are already going on are being done in a very important and significant way, and then bring in more focus on those areas in the rural economy which have been overlooked so far. We'll come back again next week with a different aspect of the economy to focus upon. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.